So today I wanted to talk about uh, who's going to be cut in the next Super Smash Bros. Game. Basically, just for fun and but also like speculation. And really, this is how I feel. Based off of what Sakurai himself has said when they were designing Ultimate, and they did Everyone is Here, all of the characters that were in 3DS Wii U, they were able to port over and then modify pretty easily. However, characters that were older than that, like Snake, Pichu, Ice Climbers, were old enough that their data couldn't be ported over. So they needed roughly the same amount of development time as if they were a brand new fighter. However, obviously, everyone is here in Ultimate. So that makes me feel like that when it comes to a theoretical sequel, from a game development perspective, I don't think it would be that hard to just take the Ultimate roster, port it into the new game, make tweaks because it's in a new engine or a modified engine, and then add newcomers. And therefore, I feel like that realistically, they're only going to cut a character if they choose to cut a character because for some reason they don't want them in the game anymore, or if because they're a third-party character and they aren't able to get the license to renew seamlessly. But I also think that another factor is that obviously we're talking about a game that's played by 30 million people but has 89 playable characters. So like, you cut any character, there's thousands at minimum of people that are like upset or disappointed or like, they just cut my main. That sucks. And they know that. And for that reason, I really think that they are going to, while developing the next game, bring back as many characters as possible and make as few cuts as possible, and then also add in as many newcomers as they can because, everybody always wants newcomers. And that is why, and also the main reason why everyone was here was hard to pull off for Ultimate was because of the third-party characters and because of how many people need to be reworked. And therefore, I feel like that in another Smash game, doing Everyone is Here again, I think would probably actually be easier than it was the first time because the foundation has been laid and there's not really like they wouldn't have to rebuild anyone from scratch, and that it would just come down to and that it would really just come down to is Microsoft willing to give Banjo again? Is Square willing to do Cloud and Sora again? And that's why my prediction is that everyone that is in Ultimate will return in the next game, and that if there are any cuts, it'll be third-party characters getting cut because of copyright reasons. Also, another factor is that obviously the next Smash Bros. Game is going to be a Switch 2 exclusive and won't be on the Switch 1, but I think that the fact that, the Switch 2 is fully backwards compatible with Switch 1 also supports this. Because, for example, when 3DS Wii U came out and characters from Brawl were cut, and they cut Wolf, it was Wolf was cut and that sucks, but our only options are the dust off the Wii or play the new game. But in this case, when the next Smash game comes out, Ultimate is still going to be playable on the current console. And the truth is, Ultimate and whatever's next are both going to be playable easily, without any bullshit, on Switch 2. And obviously, like, they don't want a situation of like what happened with Brawl and Melee, where like Brawl came out, it sold really well because it was, you know, the new game on the big new console, but then everyone stopped playing it and just went back to playing Melee. And something like that will happen if they cut a significant amount of the veterans that are in Ultimate. And then, of course, and that also, of course, makes me feel like that when it comes to the development of the new game, it really is probably just going to be, we port everything over, then we modify things as necessary, we play the copyright game with the owners of the third-party characters, and then we start cranking out new characters for the new game. And also, because of the fact that, obviously, even though we don't know the exact numbers, it's like, obviously, if they put Waluigi in the game, that's going to cost less money for Nintendo than if they put Yu Narukami from Persona 4 in the game, because they own Waluigi, they don't own Yu Narukami. And therefore, I feel like that, just like how with Ultimate, the base roster newcomers were mostly Nintendo, and then the DLC was mostly third party, and then obviously they split the DLC profits with the third party companies. I think that's probably going to happen again for whatever the next game is as well. Also, the only other thing that's left to talk about, I think, is like, when the hell is this game going to come out? And that's a hard question to answer, because I know that there's a lot of people that are thinking like, bro, Kirby Air Riders came out 2 months ago. Like, we're still years away. But I also feel like Air Riders came out on November 20th, which means that realistically, the game probably went gold officially in like September, which means probably February or March of 2025 is when they were like, yeah, the game is done, we just need to polish it and make sure that it doesn't have frame drops or glitches and that everything runs smoothly when the game comes out. In other words, it is. And then obviously another thing is, most of the job of like talking about copyright and finalizing a roster is going to happen before all the devs, like, you know, sit down in front of their computers and start programming. And therefore, well, I would not be surprised if the roster for the next Smash game was finalized in like at the January, February of 2025, and then in like March, April, when Air Riders entered the debug phase, essentially, of just like, yep, just make sure the game runs smoothly. I feel like that even as things stand right now, we're probably about at least 1 full year into the next Smash game's development behind the scenes. And therefore, that makes me feel like that, honestly, they could easily do something like they reveal the game to us, like, you know, in June of this year, and then it's a 2027 release and has like roughly a year of hype. But we will see, and only time will tell. And I feel like that my opinion is a little different than what a lot of other people are thinking, which is why I wanted to get it out there.